The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. The numbers of those drinking excessively soared during the pandemic, says Maureen Palmer, the author of You Don't Have to Quit, a new book that challenges the idea that abstinence is the only path to a healthy relationship with alcohol. Palmer prefers to shift the conventional abstinence-only mindset to one that encourages positive change and harm reduction. Putting the blame and the onus solely on the person with alcohol use disorder is unreasonable and unachievable, Palmer says. More than 50% of relationships where one partner struggles with alcohol use end in divorce. And that's a huge cost to families and to society. A documentarian by profession, Palmer set out to interview world experts who have created successful tools, techniques, and resources to help reduce and stop drinking. Tools designed for couples, says Palmer, couples who love one another but face challenges supporting, caring, and communicating. I invited Maureen Palmer, the author of You Don't Have to Quit, for a conversation that matters about science-backed strategies based in compassion, empathy, and healthy boundaries that can help you and your loved one drink less. Maureen, welcome.
Thank you.
I have to tell you that my initial response to your book is You Don't Have to Quit. I thought that that was the common belief that no, you do have to quit, that abstinence is the only way to address alcohol use, abuse, or disorder.
I think it has been the only way for 8 decades. But if you look at the full continuum of what we might consider to be a drinking problem, according to the experts in the US, 90% of people, and that's millions of people, who have a drinking problem don't have a dependence. And if those people are not going to buy the message of you have to quit, and you have to quit entirely, but because of the disease burden associated with even moderate drinking now, those people are probably going to be open to a message of cutting back.
What do you mean by disease burden?
There's over 200 diseases, conditions associated with alcohol. And the most onerous burden is cancers, 7 cancers, heart disease, diabetes, and dementia. And if we could get to everyone we love and have a conversation about alcohol before their problem gets out of hand. But conventional wisdom has us waiting for most people to hit rock bottom. And rock bottom,
well, that's been the conventional wisdom is that, well, you got to hit rock bottom before you're going to find the wherewithal internally to stand up and address what is clearly a challenge.
And there are, my partner Mike suffered from a devastating alcohol use disorder, and he's a therapist, and he believes in something he calls the critical incident, which can be something nasty that happens as a result of alcohol, but isn't going to kill you. And there is quite a bit of evidence that says that critical incident can be a spur of pretty big behavior change if you've got a serious drinking problem. But the vast majority of people, according to the experts and the statistics, can moderate. And people who actually start drinking in a moderate path, who have a heavy, heavy drinking problem, most of them end up in abstinence. They see moderation as a path to ultimately quitting. So Mike says, he jokes about the title, You Don't Have to Quit, but maybe if you've got a serious drinking problem, you probably should.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea. And I mean, the title has, it's twofold. It's You Don't Have to Quit as a broader entry point to getting a lot more people to consider cutting back. And then you don't have to quit on the relationship. If we have the tools at our disposal to help a loved one learn to drink less and ultimately quit, if that's what that person decides, we have those skills. We just don't know about them.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Well, let's talk about the couple component first, and then we'll look into or discuss many of the strategies that you lay out in the book.
Yes.
Alcohol, whether it's abuse or misuse, has a profound relationship impact, and it's one that it seems as though it has to build to a critical point before you're going to instigate a conversation. Part of me goes, why is it so difficult for us to bring this up earlier on when we start to maybe see some of the telltale signs that suggest there's a challenge here?
I think it's difficult for a whole host of reasons. One can be economics. Like if somebody is the sole breadwinner who happens to be drinking, there's a lot of impetus on that person to keep working. So you're hesitant to approach them about what might be their main way of stress reduction. Another one is
quitting your job. Yeah.
It is inevitably a conversation that's fraught. Because if anybody comes at me about a problem I have, I'm likely to get defensive. I want to, protect myself. My dignity is going to be hurt. And the reality is, in our culture, so much stigma and shame is associated with drinking, in other words, alcoholic, that most people are just loath to even have a conversation about it.
Well, I think that it's because we perceived we're being judged. It's not even okay. I recognize that there's something happening here, and we need to work together. I think you can't help but still go, "Oh, you're judging me," and that has to be a huge barrier.
I think it's a terrible, terrible feeling to have. I know that my Mike lost everything, and was incredibly judged at every step of his downfall, from a certain bank cutting up his credit cards publicly in the bank. Shame and judgment is woven into every layer of this. So anybody that is told that their loved ones think they have a drinking problem automatically is going to get their back up. So one of the things I really wish we could do before it gets to that place is to have healthier conversations about drinking less way earlier. But if the problem gets extreme over here, there are ways we can sort of lay pipes, so to speak, to create an environment where that person is going to be open to behavior change. And it's not just the drinker's behavior change, it's my behavior change too.
Well, okay, so is the onus on the communicator, the deliverer of the message, or the recipient?
If you want the relationship to thrive, especially if there's children, if you love this person, and this person has shown discipline and restraint in every other aspect of their life, but they just have a problem with alcohol, I think it's incumbent on the both of you to learn skills that will best that person's chances of kicking an alcohol problem.
So what do those skills look like?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. But I think the biggest one starts with empathy. And the experts say that empathy can be taught. If I come at you and say, Stuart, I can't stand your drinking anymore. You're an embarrassment to me. Look what you did last night.
What did I do last night?
You see, you can't even remember. You're going to get your back up, right? If I say something like, Stuart, I really wish there was a way that we could both drink less. I find that my drinking is getting to be a problem. What do you think about your drinking? Invite an opening of a conversation. If you notice ways in which the person is trying to moderate their drinking, comment on that. Like, I'm so
in a complimentary way.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm so grateful last night. I noticed you normally have 3 glasses of wine after dinner. I noticed you only had 2. How come? I'm really happy because I think you sleep better when you drink a little less. I know I do. Mm-hmm. So it's about inviting a conversation, not beginning a condemnation.
How frequently do you have to do this, though, without it, and frequency is kind of an interesting thing. The more you do something, hopefully you get better at it. But in this kind of conversation, you got to be careful that you're not going too far, and it becomes, okay, there you are, you're trying to control me.
you got to walk this fine line, because
Yeah.
pretty well everybody who's a spouse of somebody who drinks gets, you're just trying to control me, right? And it can be exhausting to be the spouse, especially if there's kids in the house, you're doing damage control, you're trying to manage the family's life as that person's drinking ramps up. It's really hard not to get resentful and exhausted, right? So in order to embark upon the path that I'm suggesting, you've got to have supports. You've got to have people who are not going to call you a codependent, who are not going to call you an enabler, who are going to be there when you phone them and just listen and not say something like, you've got to get him to go to AA.
Like your friends.
Exactly, right? People say stuff because they've only ever heard one thing in their entire lives, and that's, you need to go to AA.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a whole other realm of evidence-based approaches that we can use. Most people don't know about them, and most people believe in the language of codependency and enabling. Codependency shames the very people who are left helping the people who drink too much, because our society does a really poor job.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. But you just talked about you need to have support.
Yes.
AA, of course, is a support group. Mm-hmm. But if you're not going to follow strictly the scripture, I guess, according to Alcoholics Anonymous, then you need to have other kind of support. And what does that support look like? And where do you get it from?
So there's support for the drinker and support for the drinker's family. I would say if somebody's got a serious drinking problem, by all means try AA. That you might find a group, and try more than one, because you might find something where you really feel at home. But if you don't think quitting outright and going through the steps is going to work for you, there's Smart Recovery, which is an evidence-based, largely cognitive behavioral therapy program. There's a program called Community Reinforcement and Family Training, which is proven to be more effective than Al-Anon and standard interventions at getting family members to accept help. And it actually has a better outcome for the non-drinker in families.
So what's at the core of that program that makes it so successful?
Oh, well, I like the 7 steps of positive communication, because they teach you how to have a conversation with someone with a drinking problem in a way designed to be effective so that you will be heard. And I mean, there's so many other parts to community reinforcement and family training. There's little bites, and there's a lot of it on the internet about this, that you can take and just absorb. Like, my book is 1 chapter at a time, and 2 or 3 of them are about craft and some basic skills you can learn that will really help you motivate the person that you care about. The other thing is the basics of motivational interviewing, which there's a fellow by the name of Dr. William Miller, and he invented motivational interviewing about 30 years ago. And it is like the bedrock of over 2,500 randomized control trials. It's used in dentistry offices, the front office of police stations. It's all about approaching people who have a behavior problem where they're going to meet you with resistance in a manner designed to break down that resistance. And I've learned a lot about motivational interviewing.
So what does that look like? Give me an example right
Okay.
now. Motivationally interview me.
Just trying to think of how best to do it. So one of the things is, most of us, when we come up with resistance, we will argue, we will order, we will fight, we will badger, we will hound, we will lecture, we will take a superior tone. All of that reinforces resistance. The person that we're coming at with all of that isn't going to listen to us. So the first thing we have to do is roll with resistance. If you're meeting resistance, take the conversation somewhere else, because that person is not ready. There's stages of change in motivational interviewing. And the first one is pre-contemplation. If you sit with me, Stu, and you say, I don't have a drinking problem, I don't know what you're talking about, you have a drinking problem, why don't you cut back? You're in pre-contemplation, which means you're not even ready to have the conversation yet. So if someone is in your house is talking that way, you need to go away and think about how to find a way into a conversation that they might meet you halfway at. And one of the things I think about is, I know lots of people who have a drinking problem whose spouses still drink. And I used to have a bottle of wine in the house.
Right.
My partner was sober for 5 years.
Well, you've got that great bit in there about him undergoing an MRI.
Yes.
And
yeah. So it's a study at the Medical University of South Carolina where he was put in an MRI, fMRI, and he was shown images of alcohol drinks and non-alcohol drinks, a little toggle in his hand, and he was asked to react on a scale of 1 to 5 by how much he was activated. And he kept going 0, 1, 0, 1 to everything. Nothing was bothering him. The next day, we saw his brain scan and compared it to other people who are actually diagnosed with an alcohol use disorder, severe. Mike's brain was exactly like their brains, lit up like a Christmas tree.
even though he was saying, no effect.
I'm fine, I'm long done with this. No, he wasn't. And so when he drank again after 5 years of sobriety, I had had a bottle of wine in the fridge all those years.
A trigger.
And it was a trigger. And so I think if you really want to be serious to help your loved one, I can have a glass of wine. Now, one of the benefits of living with Mike is I have like 3 glasses of Prosecco a year, and they're really good.
You really enjoy them.
I really enjoy them. It's easy to not have alcohol in the house, but it's so counter to the culture, especially coming up to the Christmas season, where alcohol is everywhere.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. You know, I have to give a big shout out of acknowledgement to what you and Mike are doing with the videos that you're posting online. Because Mike's standing out there going, yep, I'm the guy, and I have had problems.
Yeah.
And in one of them, I was quite moved. I was watching it. He goes, you know, when you talk to me, there's things that you can say to me that really help me believe that I can address this challenge.
Yeah.
And it being, you know, I believe in you. How important is it, especially to hear from the most important person in your life, that they believe in you?
It's absolutely critical. If you're a person with a drinking problem, all you hear is criticism. People are on you all the time. People stop saying kind things to you. People give up on you. And everybody gave up on Mike. And he ended up homeless on the downtown east side.
It's hard for me to imagine because I've met Mike and
know.
he's a pretty fierce tennis player.
Yeah.
And I look at him and I go, you are an example of a robust, healthy man.
Disciplined in every other way but alcohol. So he said something that Adam Grant says quite often. If you want someone to succeed, you have to genuinely say to them, I believe in you. I know you can do this. And that is the message that when Mike has a slip, that's the message I come back with. And I have to tell you, I'm not a saint. Sometimes I do not do that. I fail. I say like, oh, everything was so good. What were you thinking? Why did you do this? You know, we're supposed to retire soon. What if your drinking spirals out of control? I fall victim to the mythology of the culture, even though I've spoken to the experts and the evidence says that's not true. The vast majority of people who drink again, a few days later go, oh, that was really stupid. I can't believe I did that. And then embark on another long period of sobriety. The periods of sobriety get longer and longer, and over time, the drinking periods get shorter and shorter. And that's the reality. It's not people are sober for 20 years and then drink and go off the rails forever.
You make me think about some of the studying that I had done about how you change habits.
Yes.
And what we have a tendency to do is to say, okay, I'm going to change this habit.
Yeah.
Oh, darn, I didn't.
You didn't do it.
And then you give up. But what you don't recognize is happening is just the attempt starts to break the neurological response to whatever the stimulus is, just because you tried.
Yes.
And so coming back and saying, okay, that's part of the process. You try, okay, now you got to try again.
Yeah.
But each time you try again, you have a little bit more success. And I think that we have this tendency to say, well, I have to make the attempt now, and I have to be successful. I got to go from 0 to 100 in one jump. When you're much better off saying, oh, it may take me more than 100 tries, but each time it's going to make a difference. And this is where I think that the language that you and Mike were talking about in the video about I believe in you plays an important role.
Yeah.
Because it encourages you to keep going.
Yes. We've been talking about Mike having, there's people in the sobriety internet world who hold up signs, 365 days sober or 12 years sober. I've only been half joking with Mike about you stand up there and you hold a sign that says 365 days sober, and then the next sign says 2 slips. Because nobody talks about their slips. They're ashamed and embarrassed of them. And if we don't actually talk about them, we don't accept them as part of recovery and say it's okay to keep trying. And I'm not suggesting that people who are completely abstinent and take great pride in their decade or 5 years of sobriety, that is laudable.
Oh, yeah.
But the people over here who have the odd slip, but manage to maintain a largely abstinent lifestyle, we can't shame those people for their slips, or they will have more of them. The evidence says that.
So, in writing this book, was it, I guess, who benefited the most? You or Mike? Like, was it cathartic for you?
Mike is of two minds about this book, to be honest. I mean, when he watches this, he'll be ambivalent, which is a big, a big area in addiction. He's happy that we're helping people. He doesn't like his life being out there again.
Well, I think it's very bold of him, or brave of him to do so.
It is brave of him, yeah. It helped me learn to be a more compassionate person and more accepting of my own flaws, and really understanding that alcohol is such a terrible, terrible problem, such a deeply destructive disorder, and we essentially leave the individual and their family holding the bag for a largely cultural problem. The alcohol industry makes billions. The treatment industry, which I can never for the life of me get my head around, a part of healthcare that is the only part that's truly privatized and allowed to be so, also makes money off of addiction. And I feel like we really do need to do a much better job of supporting the individual and their families.
And I think that that's the note that we will wrap up on, because I believe that is where it really matters the most.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.